They're very...
I've had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Bringing Chicago's audio up.
I don't care for you, look at the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Puss-faced little pimpstick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
Welcome back to the show. We are, of course, live streaming at infotainmentwars.com. Who needs documents when you have the memories? We're very excited. There's a Mike Pillow movie coming up that I will be breaking down sentence by sentence, lie by lie in the next, in like 2 weeks. It's always 2 weeks away, but it's supposed to be coming up soon.
What's
and then,
it
of
called?
course,
Do you know what it's called?
I don't, absolute doof. It's always, it's got the word absolute in it, like every time. But we're going to be covering that on my show, just like we did 2,000 Mules. No word yet on my debate with Dinesh D'Souza. He's still chickening out. The last we heard was he would have a lively discussion that he could edit, and I don't know. We're going to do it live and live stream it or not. I don't do it. And then, of course, so like and subscribe to the show. Help out the show by being a Patreon supporter, patreon.com/HalSparks, or go to twitch.tv/HalSparks if you got one of the youngins in the house and they have one of those accounts, and subscribe. Helps us out a lot. And if you can't afford to help out because times are tight, don't worry about it. Just listen, enjoy. Hopefully, we will alleviate some of the pressure in your life, get you motivated, and keep you from being in balling up in fetal position and anxiety, and being productive as someone who actually cares about the issues that we talk about. Joining us right now is Philip Ittner, our dear friend who is in Ukraine. And he's still in Odessa. He's still in the Black Sea, rubbing it in.
Yeah, for those of you watching, I'll let the camera get a little...
There it is.
There's the Black Sea for you.
It's, of course, gorgeous and possibly full of mines. So it's a...
Yeah, say what you will about America. We do not have too many landmines.
We've solved that a bit. By the way, the Ukrainian military announced this week that they have received 2 Boston Dynamics dogs that are helping with mine removal. They walk along, and they, instead of losing Patron, our dear little friend, for those of you who don't know, there's a Ukrainian bomb-sniffing dog. He's adorable. He looks like the dog from Frasier, and with a little
Boston Terrier.
He's a little Boston Terrier with a bomb vest on. And he's great at it, and he's a national hero because every mine or bomb or unexploded munition he finds is some kid not stepping on something and dying from it later. It's a wonderful thing, especially as they clear Bucha and other places. But the future is really in not endangering dogs, real live dogs, and sending these Boston Dynamics crawlers out to scan the ground. And so the first 2 have arrived in Ukraine, and they are doing that in Bucha and around Kiev and the areas that have been, liberated.
They're like
over
robot
time.
Dogs?
Yeah, they're
and you can also buy little stuffed animals of
support.
Patron.
Yes,
To
Patron.
support the army. You can buy your very own Patron stuffed
plushie.
Animal. Okay, yes, it's a Jack Russell. Okay, all right.
It's all right. It's a Jack Russell Terrier. That's right. Everybody's correcting. But it's I'll post the link on it.
Get your dog breed wrong.
This is right. Yes,
Yeah,
of all the details.
Zarad is asking what they do about mine removal. Are they really doing it?
They put them in a box, a big old invisible box.
Right. They did you see? I'm sure you saw this footage early on where the Russians had laid mines across one of the roads, and one of the Ukrainian soldiers was just shuffling it with his foot because the triggers because here's the thing. This goes to the kind of idiocy of the Russian planning, is that those are the kind that have to be buried because you have to step on them to set them off. The rest of the body of it doesn't matter. It's got a trigger mechanism on the very top. It's a pressure thing. As long as you don't touch the top, nothing happens.
Those particular mines from that footage, those were anti-vehicle mines. Those you can't. You need to roll over those with something
significant pressure.
Several hundred.
You don't want to waste them on white-tailed deer. You don't want to waste them on white-tailed deer. You want them to actually go off when it's a truck. And so these guys were just brushing them with their foot right out of the road. Just, amazing to watch in general. Okay, well, let's start off with just we know we're going to have questions from our chat room. for Philip at infotainmentwars.com or at twitch.tv/HalSparks, or even on the Facebook page if you want to throw up some questions. Johnny Million will be farming questions for us for Philip while he's there. But Philip, give us your sort of assessment of the last week, of what's going on there and any kind of changes that you've seen.
Well, okay, so we mentioned the HIMARS having arrived, and we've already seen them in action overnight. At least 4 are in country. We also know that there are German artillery systems that have arrived. They're also going to be handy and useful in what is, in essence, an artillery duel. Sadly, however, bad news on the Ukrainian side of things is that it does look like they're gonna lose Severodonetsk. They're gonna have to withdraw from there and go across the river. They've been defending it for so long, and I spoke to somebody within the last 24 hours or so, and we're kind of talking about what that tactic was, and in a lot of ways, it was kind of like he referred to it as kind of Ali's rope-a-dope technique of kind of just like pinning, letting them crash against your defenses in Severodonetsk and keep them occupied, have them expend as much as they possibly can, and then pull back, and hopefully you will have consumed enough of their men and material and taken up enough time for the weaponry that they're expecting from the West to get in place. Yeah. And then eventually there will be a counteroffensive. I mean, there is a counteroffensive going on in Kherson. Right. And they're making slow progress, the Ukrainians, down in Kherson. And that's really strategically important because that's where the water canal, just outside of Kherson itself, is where the water canal that supplies the fresh water to the Crimean Peninsula, which is, so much of this war is all about the Crimean Peninsula. Mm-hmm. The Kherson Canal, it's called the North Crimea Canal or the Kherson Canal. And so the Ukrainians are pushing back in Kherson already, but the real counteroffensive has not started yet. And when that does, it's going to be quite something to watch. Mm-hmm.
I would say,
I think they're going to take a lot of territory back.
I agree. I think the Severodonetsk is a more articulated version of what was really happening at the steel plant and when they were just taking artillery, and they held it as long as they could, not so much because they thought they could maintain it because of the size of the Russian force. It was always going to be one of those things they were going to have to give up at a certain point. But by holding it as long as they did, they distracted the Russian forces down there, made it look like a bigger deal than it was, made it an ego point for the Russians, and they sent all those materials down there. They have done the exact same thing in Severodonetsk and pulled forces away from Kherson, which is strategically more important and more valuable for the civilian population. Even there, they've been able to move out most of the civilians from Severodonetsk and get them safe and blown up the bridges so that coming across is even harder. This is old World War II level, front fighting. The difference is that they held them there long enough. They distracted them up in the north, and now with the HIMARS being available, there was a video I saw from sort of comparing the missile systems of the Russians versus the HIMARS systems that were coming in that are being used right now. They showed specific targeting, and they were showing the kind of phosphorus cluster bomb droppage from the Republicans, just kind of peppering an entire roadway area near a city, just little hits all over the place. None of it strategically significant, but all of it just to make it impossible for people to breathe. Basically just killing people, indiscriminately in an entire range. Meanwhile, the HIMARS is targeted by a drone system, and they are able to hit buildings singularly without even destroying the building next door. And that level of precision is especially necessary for the Ukrainians because they want these cities back one day and they'd rather not level them. The Russians don't care. The Russians, if we have to start from scratch, it'll keep our people busy for a few years while we build these cities up from, with the sewer pipes still exist, but everything else we can just make our own. And that distinction between the targeting, both about the civilian population, about the the care and thought put into the war is very distinctly different between the Russians and the Ukrainians. Did you hear, by the way, Philip? Before we get into the chat farmed questions, did you hear about the trucks full of Belarusian ammo? Apparently, Russia has put over. I want to say somewhere in the order of like 10 trucks were seen leaving at this one particular area, just loading up ammunition from Belarus and moving it out, taking it either back to Russia or into Ukraine later to be Russia. And it is making the people in Minsk very nervous that this might be them thinking that Lukashenko is not sufficiently loyal to Putin, and therefore they're basically disarming them right now.
I've heard a lot of things coming out of Belarus recently, and a lot of reasons to have concern over there, not least of which the maneuvers that they were going on, these reports of ammo being moved around. Mm-hmm. But Lukashenko, again, is in a no-win situation when it comes to this war, because he can't send his troops over. He can be used as a staging area for Russian troops, but he can't send Belarusian troops over because he needs them at home to put down his own people, because he's got a major opposition. That the same troops that would be used to put down an uprising, if they get sent into Ukraine, well, then he's got an uprising in the rear of his forces. So he's in a no-win situation when it comes to deploying any troops or getting directly involved in this war.
Right.
And also, in addition to that, there's not a lot for them to go for out in the West. I mean, there's a town called Lutsk that he could strike towards in an effort to then move on towards Lviv. Mm-hmm. But the second he does that, Lviv is a huge reserve point. Right. So that's where they pull their soldiers. When they need to pull their soldiers off the line, a lot of them get sent to Lviv. So it's not like it's defenseless. And they'd see it coming a mile off, they'd see it coming miles off, and they would fortify Lviv. But strategically, it makes very little sense, except unless he's trying to cut them off from Poland. And even that isn't going to work, because there's still a massive border with Poland, with Romania.
Right.
It's too porous for them to try and stop.
They've been talking on Channel 1 on the that Russian 60-minute show this week about how the Ukrainians have to worry that that Poland is going to invade them. That Poland has dreams of making Ukraine a puppet state, and therefore, so clearly their idea of cutting them off isn't going to work. So I guess this would be the soft power version of this. If they can physically do it and make the Ukrainians distrustful of the Poles, which is just like goofy 1940s garbage.
Yeah, no, they're playing what that stuff is they're trying to play on old hostilities between Poles and Ukrainians.
Right.
It's not going to work.
No,
it's not going to work. It's 20th century, early 20th century.
It's mid-century nonsense.
It's bull.
But they're saying it like it's serious. They are. I mean, you and I both are like, what the hell? Most people look at it. Yeah. We're like, what are you talking about? And yet they're talking about this like it's a serious thing. Like and again, they also talked about Trump like he was a serious candidate. Part of this might be manipulative. The entire point is you pretend they're, allegedly really good at pretending they believe certain things, but good Lord.
Yeah, no, it's delusional. It's absolutely 100% delusional. And it also betrays their lack of understanding of Ukraine, of Poland. They live
humanity.
They live in a world where everything stopped in kind of 1991 in the fall of the Soviet Union, and they don't understand that things have actually progressed and moved on. So it's depressing to know that they're that deluded, and that they're either deluding themselves or they're really that out of touch with the reality on the European continent.
Yeah. And again, perhaps this, to to kind of look at this from their own reactionary response. Perhaps this has something to do with, I don't know. We have to, I think I blazed past the break. So we need to take a quick break real quick so we can come back for a little short thing. We're going to, there's so much to talk about. Philip Ittner is with us. Follow him at Philip Ittner, 1 L in Philip, 2 T's in Ittner on Twitter. And of course, he's growing his vlog on YouTube. That's the, you'll find links on his Twitter feed and on mine to take you there, and you can subscribe. We'll be back right after this. A failed plan is not a sign of innocence. And we were just talking during the break that, Trump's whole thing, Putin would have done this if I was in office, guaranteed 100%. Well, first of all, it's easy to do when you've been voted out of office. To say, you can say whatever. You can say gas prices never would have gone up. You can say that there would have never been another pandemic, that masks were something. You can make up any of that stuff, because who's to say, right? You could just say that. Only your followers need to believe it. Nobody else takes it seriously. But in terms of where we are with Ukraine, we were just talking about how, Philip, that that Trump was like, this wouldn't have happened. Well, yeah, he wouldn't have had to invade. You would have just handed it to him. They would have taken Kiev in 2 days, because they wouldn't have even had the javelins he was holding back when he was trying to manipulate Zelensky into doing this press conference for him against Joe Biden within weeks of the presidency to try and recomey the election. Like the Comey interview or the Comey press conference about Hillary Clinton's emails absolutely statistically played a part in Trump's win in 2016. Absolutely, a 2%. It was enough of a shift that helped a lot. But he thought it was way bigger a part of his win than it was. And he's always trying to recreate it, both with Zelensky then, with the Hunter Biden laptop nonsense, and then ultimately, with Raffensperger and everybody in Georgia saying, look, just go out and say that it's corrupt and we'll take care of it. This came out this week in the January 6th committee. Just say it. And then because people believe to some degree, if you say it out loud and strongly enough, that it must be somewhat true, and that amount of doubt will let you slip in the door. That'll give you room to muscle past. That'll be enough of a dodge or a distraction to get you through. And Russia's, on a giant scale, it's been a big week for Russia when it comes to Americans on bicycles. Nice segue there. Because did you see what the naval attache in Moscow was up to this week? He rode up on his bike. So the naval attache was out bike riding and apparently came across a Z symbol on a lamppost and decided it would be a smart thing to do to take out his cell phone and to take a picture of him flipping the bird at the Z. He should have known better. He took a shot of his finger at the Z on a lamppost. He should have known better. There are cameras everywhere. In Moscow. Yeah. Everywhere. And of course they filmed it, and it was just red meat for the Russians. They went absolutely ballistic. There was a member of the State Duma, the lower house of the Russian parliament, who was openly calling for this guy to be accosted in the streets. It's just, they went absolutely ballistic. Dear God, Philip, what if a naval attaché from the United States on his bicycle can give the finger to the Z? What will the Russian people think they're allowed to do going forward? You know what I mean? Like, I got news for you. In the United States, you can roll up to any sign and take a selfie of yourself giving it the finger. From Donald Trump to Joe Biden, you can even, if you put a sticker on a pump that says, I did that with Joe Biden, you're a jerk, but you're not going to jail.
Nope, that's the freedom of speech.
Yeah, that's the part,
I don't know how much we would appreciate a Russian attaché, urinating on the American flag. I don't think we would. That's a step further. No, that's a step further. That's how they're responding to it, though. Right. That's how they're. But it also does show that, like, when they were flipping out about it so much, they were saying, like, how dare he insult our great military and our army, and how disrespectful that is when our men are out there fighting the good fight and dying, and all this kind of stuff. Which, okay, I can understand the mentality, but at the same point,
you could always bring them home.
Yeah, here's a solution: bring them home.
All of them. Get them out of there. Even the
Yeah.
Wagner, like maybe I tell you what. Yeah, we'll just say he wasn't giving the finger to the Russian conscripts, the ones who are being forced to fight. He was giving the finger to the Wagner group.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
But,
all right.
look, and there are a lot of Russians who do not like what's going on. I mean, I saw footage just recently within the last 36, 48 hours of them somewhere out east. I want to say it was Ekaterinburg, maybe further east, of them Russians Molotov cocktailing an army recruitment office.
Whoa.
You know, taking Molotov cocktails and filming themselves doing this. Okay, and at least 2 young men chucking Molotov cocktails through the windows of an army recruitment office and filming it. All right, so things are not going well within their own population, and that's in addition to the very real sabotage that we're seeing. I mean, there was a hydroelectric plant out near Lake Baikal in Irkutsk that again spontaneously decided to explode.
Right.
It's happening with increasing regularity, and I'm telling you, I was speaking to a Russian friend of mine who couldn't take it anymore, and she decided to go to Turkey, and she was in Turkey, and we were talking to one another, and she felt a little bit more at ease to talk now that she was out of Russia, and she was openly saying to me, no, we all hate this. Everybody of a certain age,
right?
We all hate this. We're all against it. We're all really furious at Putin. Not only because they're just ethically against the war, which I think a lot of them are, but they're also realizing that this is going to destroy their future. If you're in your 20s or your 30s, your
country's done. Let's take a real break, and then we'll come back after this,
Yeah.
and we're going to have questions from the chat room at infotainmentwars.com. Like and subscribe today. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. It helps us out a lot. And if you're a troll, thank you for stopping by. You spread us out through the algorithm in a way we couldn't do ourselves. You're adorable. We'll be back right after this.
Why doesn't
there we
the
go.
Ukrainian government evacuate the cities that the Russian troops are approaching before the cities are surrounded?
They do. They absolutely 100% do. But you can't force people to leave, and a lot of people, in particular in Severodonetsk, a lot of people were like, no, we're not going to leave. I know the same thing kind of happened in Mariupol. You can't force people to leave, but they do conduct massive evacuations when they see the Russians headed towards the city, and that's why I saw Trump this week ranting about how the Ukrainians are obviously hiding the numbers of dead because you see these apartment buildings that have been blasted, and then they say only a couple hundred people died in the city or something like that. Well, it's because they evacuate. That's why they have so many internally displaced people out in Lviv or in Kiev. I mean, there are not so many here, but they do get them out.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. That's awesome. I've got another one here from Ed's 3D Tech. Can you ask Phil how about Mars missile systems and how well they're working? Did you and Hal already talk about this?
A little bit.
A little bit we talked about it. I mean, there are 4 confirmed. I would not be terribly surprised if there are more than that. They are using them in a very specific way. They are using them in anti-battery attacks. So when the Russians open up fire with their artillery, because they outdistance Russian artillery, they are using them to destroy the Ukrainian forces are using the HIMARS to destroy Russian artillery. You don't want to put those things too far forward, because if you put them too far forward, they are vulnerable and you can't lose them. You absolutely cannot lose them. So they're keeping them safe. They're using for very specific purposes, and that's to destroy, outdistance and destroy Russian artillery. Yes, my beard is completely out of control, and when I get back to Kiev, I'm going to get it cleaned up.
I don't think so. I think yeah, absolutely. I think we can get another one in.
Okay, so from Blue Dog 1969, They were wondering if Phil knows if Ukraine has been able to move any grain through Poland or Moldova.
Yeah, I saw that question. Yes, some grain has been able to get moved out. What they're doing is they're sending it up the Danube, and they're trying to get it to the Baltics. So I know that there was a shipment that went out of, I want to say it was either Latvia or Lithuania, but it's not going to do it. It's not sufficient. It's a fraction of what they need to be sending. And the problem is it's harvest time right now, okay? So they're currently harvesting. This year's crop is not the problem. This year's crop, they're going to harvest. They're implementing a new system for storage, and they can hold on to these things probably until the end of winter. So there's not a massive urgency in terms of getting it to market. And the capability of getting it to market, they can do it. The problem is that what they do is that, as farmers around the world do, you don't just harvest your crop, get money, and then you move on to the next thing. When you get your crop to market, the money that you get back, you buy grain, you buy seeds, you buy fertilizer,
right.
you buy
right.
for next year's crop. It's next year's crop that's going to be the problem. And we will know by the end of September, if they are not able to plant next year's crop, there's almost inevitably going to be a food crisis.
Yes.
And we'll see it coming. We'll know.
The U.S., while we had a diminished winter wheat harvest, our spring wheat harvest is up, as is Canada. Both the United States and Canada are producing, I think, somewhere between 6 and 8% more than they do to try and deal with the fact that next year's stores will be down. Never mind the fact that the idea that China is hoarding half the world's grain, both corn and wheat. Understand that wheat that they're talking about is either eaten or rotten. It doesn't exist. This idea that they have stolen. A year and a half stores. Yeah, even the stuff they stole is either eaten or rotten. The idea that they've stored enough for 2 years or a year and a half is nonsense. The Russians know it, the Chinese know it. That's just goofiness. It's a story they're telling, just like 4,000 COVID deaths. And that means they're going to need more wheat next year. They don't have that. And so that in and of itself, that demand still exists. The idea that they won't have that demand next year, so they won't be taking it from the market, is absurd. And that's very scary for the Chinese people. We can take it. Let's take another question too.
We should all be very concerned about the food. And that's why they're attacking food storage. That's why they're attacking fields. And the Russians are doing it on purpose because, again, we saw this week how we talked about it on your Wednesday show. Margarita Simonian openly saying, and this is just it's just disgusting that she said this, that the Russians are actually relying on famine. That it'll force the international community to compromise when it comes to the Ukrainian war, and that's just disgusting. Given the fact that in the 20th century, millions of Ukrainians were purposefully starved to death by Russia. So to use hunger and famine against this country again in the 21st century. It's just absolutely
most of
disgusting.
Their tactics are stuff. Most of their tactics currently going on in Ukraine are stuff that worked before should work again. That's and it won't, because 2022 is not 1942, and they seem somehow unable to grasp that idea. And we also talked Shoigu, is that his name? What's the defense minister? Yeah, Shoigu. That guy, like Putin makes $140,000 a year U.S. and Shoigu makes $120,000. He makes $120,000 allegedly, or whatever. He has a $18 million house. That is, if you want a sign that every nut and bolt on Russian military gear is being sold, if they think every other bolt is being sold, if they think no one will miss it. If that is a huge part of the problem that they're facing right now. Nobody can trust their gear. I wouldn't doubt if there's a Russian soldier that finds out his firing pin has been sold, off, out of a gun he holds up to try and save his own life in a firefight. It is that bad. And
we have widespread reports of them taking boots from Ukrainian prisoners of war and from corpses because their own boots are rubbish. So,
they're old, they're rotten, or they're running around tennis shoes.
They run around tennis shoes. That's right. I mean, the whole thing, the whole power structure in Russia is built on a kleptocracy, and you have to be a participant in it. Lavrov's kids are, disproportionately wealthy. Peskov, the whole cast of characters. If you hold power in Putin's Russia, you are skimming off from somewhere because you have to, because that's the way the system. And if you don't, then you are the one good clean cop in a police department filled with dirty cops, and all the dirty cops are going to turn on you. That's the analogy I use. And
welcome to the last few months where we've got these Russian oligarchs who were allegedly on the team, but maybe not enough, who magically are murder-suiciding themselves and their families in properties all over Europe. I mean, it was 3 whole families to my count, and 5 other guys who just took a walk out a window where there was no balcony. That, I mean, statistically, knowing Russia's a significant number of those folks, that's not what really happened, and that's a scary thought. That anybody who might push back about this is being done in.
Or if you know where the proverbial bodies are buried, I mean, I still think Vladimir Zhirinovsky dying during this war. Zhirinovsky was often seen as a clown who could sometimes tell the truth, and that was his usefulness to Putin. And he, now mind you, he never lived a very healthy life. But the fact that he up and died during this war, not that I'm not one who goes in for conspiracy theories, but Zhirinovsky dying at the height of this war, I find highly suspect.
Well, and every single member of Putin's circle has plausible mortality. None of them, nobody would be surprised if any of them died, if not by just natural causes, by the other stuff they are gacked up in other countries. The financial dealings they have with arms dealers and God knows who else, even beyond their relationship with Russia. So it makes them easy targets if you do decide to broom them. Let's see. Let's take since we got over the break last time, let's take an early break right now. We'll come back, and in our happy ending, we will have some more questions from the chat room for Philip. This is the House Sparks Radio
and
program.
one of them, I'm going to prepare Phil. One person, Sam Sasquatch, is asking if Phil has a happy ending from Ukraine.
Oh, all right. Yeah, that's heavy lifting sometimes. We'll be back right after this.